The rich diversity of Australian oceans makes an ideal environment for marine wildlife. From schools of fish to pods of dolphins, these ecosystems are a sanctuary for so many weird and wonderful creatures. One such shy yet curious creature has become a friendly face of our tropical waters. Acquiring an alternative name as sea cow, these marine mammals are modest and majestic. Traditional hunting by Indigenous tribes of Northern Australia and the Torres Strait for cultural practices has accelerated the demise of this gentle giant. We must protect this defenseless yet fascinating species. Australia's warm and shallow coastline stretching from Shark Bay to Moreton Bay gives sanctuary to over 80,000 dugongs. This accounts for 3/4 of the global population. Cyclones, tsunamis, freak heat waves and cold snaps are all a byproduct of climate change and have heavily impacted the dugong's natural habitats, destroying hectares of this large herbivorous mammal's main source of food, a variety of seagrasses. Now let's head up to the Torres Strait, a stretch of water between the Cape York Peninsula and Papua New Guinea, a dugong's paradise, a hunter's opportunity. Now this wondrous species faces an undesirable fate as the diminishing populations are listed as vulnerable to extinction. Although it is extremely hard to influence Mother Nature, we must act upon educating the communities that believe harvesting these animals is a birthright. Federal law protects the dugong, but the Native Title Act protects traditional harvest, providing the Indigenous and island tribes hunt in their own sea territory and the meat is for personal use. Unfortunately, non-locals use their heritage to continue the slaughter for monetary gain.
South of Cairns in the Yarrabah community, locals have been reported to be selling dugong meat for $50 per kilogram. These people only take the bit of the meat and leave the remains to rot on the beach. There is no such thing as traditional hunting of dugong around here.
This hunting practice is part of our culture. It's an island custom that we practice for generations. It's a way of survival that holds the deepest significance as a birthright and is passed down from generation to generation.
A traditional hunter would stand out in the shallows with a spear and wait for the opportune moment to strike their target. In recent years, a hunter will take his motorised dinghy and a harpoon-like instrument, following the mammal and shooting it several times. He will then restrain the dugong by the tail, tie it up to the back of his dinghy, and cruelly drown the animal, which can take up to 7 minutes.
The unsustainable hunting rate is prompting fear that the entire dugong population will not survive another decade in Australian waters. These days, there are numerous alternative resources to support the people's dietary needs. To give the dugongs a chance to survive, a 0% human-induced mortality rate must be enforced.
Dugongs are the last surviving member of the family Dugongidae. This makes their genes so incredibly unique and valuable. Preservation of this species represents the opportunity and responsibility to contribute significantly to the conservation of oceanic biodiversity. The traditional use of the Marine Resources Agreement was a scheme developed primarily to facilitate co-management of habitats of protected and endangered species. The cultural significance of dugong hunting is considered a rite of passage and is integral to preserve, but Indigenous tribes have also a responsibility to protect the environment.
Heading over to Central America, where the West Indian manatee faces a similar circumstance to our precious dugong.
Dugongidae share the order Sirenia with just 3 species of manatee. Many countries in Central America hunt the manatee for their meat, oil, and bones. It is often hard to blame one country in particular for the devastating population loss, as their habitat is spread throughout numerous countries. The regional management plans for the West Indian manatee have introduced law enforcement regulations against this harvest. Exploitation of these mammals is driven by a demand for the product. Therefore, education programs have been implemented to local communities, making them aware that manatee conservation supersedes market value. Penalties will be carried out if illegal hunting continues, and protection zones have been put in place so habitats are preserved. A tagging regime has also been applied to keep track and observe the natural behavioural patterns of the species for better understanding.
Australian dugongs are losing the battle of survival as they fall through the cracks of our government's protective law system between the Indigenous tribes and conservationists. A moratorium should be put in place effective immediately to cease all dugong hunting in Australian waters and the Torres Strait. This will give the populations the much-needed time to recover from their undisputable decline. Once improvements have been recorded and the populations start to grow back to a level where sustainable hunting can recommence, a designated hunting area, season, permits and catch quota should be implemented. This solution will keep Indigenous customs alive while ensuring our treasured dugongs are able to swim freely for generations to see.